Black Goose TV family, what's good with it? Salute, salutations, blessings, and positivity to everybody. I know it's a late night stream, you know what I'm saying? But I said, why not? I'm chilling right now, you know what I'm saying? I was taking care of some things. And I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and go live, man. We had a pretty interesting weekend when it comes to boxing, period, and when it comes to the actual fights and the outcomes and the decisions made. So I was like, let me go ahead and go live, hop up on this Fluenceboxing. Let's go ahead and recap the weekend. You know what I'm saying? Nothing too crazy, nothing too detailed or intense or anything like that. But let's go ahead. Let's talk about it a little bit, chop it up, and just kind of get the opinion on how you feel about what happened, and also just let y'all know how I feel about what happened. Because I think even though this weekend, when it comes to boxing, wasn't necessarily the most hyped weekend in the sense of everybody was clamoring to see these fights, or there was a whole bunch of promotional shit behind it. Now that wasn't the case, but when you look at the outcome of the two fights, particular fights that we're going to be talking about in the Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall fight, obviously the Chris Colbert and the Garcia fight, no one expected these things to happen. So if you're a boxing head, if you just love boxing, period, then ain't no way you aren't intrigued on basically what happened this past weekend. So that's why I'm here. That's why I said, let's go ahead. Let's do a late night stream. It's Sunday. I know, when it comes to late nights on Sundays, it's not always the best if you're a working man, because in your head, you're like, oh, goddamn. You know what I'm saying? I got work tomorrow. It's the beginning of the week, all this good stuff. But hopefully this right here, it soothes you just a little bit, and it gets your mind right. It makes you feel like, what I'm saying, everything is going good. So before we get into everything, like I said, it's not going to be too long of a stream. I'm not going to keep you guys too long, but I just wanted to give you all a little bit of content, talk about this past weekend, because I feel like it was necessary. That was the mic check right now, so excuse me for the feedback. I just wanted to make sure y'all could hear me loud and clearly, and y'all could definitely hear me loud and clearly. But before we get into everything, if y'all hop up in here, man, please hit the like button. Hit that like button. Hit that like button. I've been told y'all, man, 2022 is going to be different when it comes to Black Goose TV. I'm giving y'all all the content in the world. That's what we on. The best content, by the way, when it comes to boxing. So hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not part of the Black Goose TV family, obviously. Hit the notification gang so you know whenever I'm going live. And then comment, man. I want to hear you guys' opinion on everything going on. So let's get straight up into it, baby. I'm not going to keep y'all too long. Happy Sunday. Hopefully everybody's weekend was beautiful. Hopefully everyone had a positive weekend, and hopefully everyone's going into the new week strong as ever. But there's some things that we got to talk about when it comes to the boxing world that has happened this past weekend that needs to be touched on and needs to be addressed. First and foremost, Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall. Obviously, if you guys caught my Fluence Lounge last night, right? That was the first Fluence Lounge since about 2 months. So if you guys didn't catch that, go ahead and rewatch that one back. Excuse the hiccups, excuse the little roughness. We're doing a start back up. It's going to go a lot smoother from here on out, but please go in there, check it out. Maybe fast forward to about 10 to 15 minutes into that joint. I'm reviewing the actual fight of Josh Catterall versus Josh Taylor, because I didn't actually catch the fight in real time. So that was me watching it real time with y'all. Y'all check that out if you want to see it, so you guys can actually see my reaction to that joint in real time. But let's go ahead and touch on it. So far, when it comes to the boxing community, it seems that majority of the community agrees that Josh Taylor did, in fact, not win that fight against Catterall. Why is this a big deal? Why does it mean something? Why is it something we should be talking about and paying attention to? Well, first and foremost, I think one thing we need to be paying attention to is the power of a major promotional company. I know this is going into something you guys probably didn't expect it to be, but this is something we need to touch on. A lot of people are calling robbery. They're saying it's one of the biggest robberies ever. Like, UK judges are looking as bad as American judges. The things we've seen is an absolute disgrace. But what a lot of people aren't putting into perspective and are actually acknowledging is the fact that Josh Taylor came into this fight. This was his first fight since signing to Top Rank. Right. Remember, Josh Taylor, he switched from, excuse me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was Frank Warren and his team. If it wasn't Frank Warren, it was DAZN. He switched. He went ahead. He became a free agent, and then he ended up signing with Top Rank as of, if it wasn't last year, it was the year before. So it was very recent. But this is his first fight under the Top Rank banner, under the Top Rank promotion. And so what a lot of people are missing in the grand scheme of things is we're so focused on the judge's decisions. We're so focused on where he fought, et cetera, but we're not putting any type of merit or any type of power to the promotional company that he signed to. Josh Taylor finally put himself in a position after the win against Regis Prograis where he was looked at and touted as one of the next best things coming up in his division at 140, right? Rightfully so. He was undisputed at 140. So why would you not pay attention to that? But also, what comes with him being the next best thing coming up and obviously having this newfound attention is, all right, you need a promotional company to back you in order to put you in position to be able to not only be seen by the US crowd, because that's what matters, right? That's what ultimately it comes down from. You have your UK fan base, but we need to get you into the US market if you want to be able to put yourself in position to have money that you never had before. Okay. And so that was the biggest reason, or the biggest factor behind Josh Taylor signing with a promotional company like Top Rank. Bob Arum probably put in front of him and said, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to start building you up in the US. We already know you have a big fan base in the UK. Just look what we did for Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury was with Frank Warren. Everyone knew about him in the UK. He came over to Top Rank. Look what we did for him. We can do the same thing for you, Josh Taylor. But you need to have a big name in the US. So if you are calling out the Terrence Crawfords of the world, then what do you need? You need the right promotional company. You can't call Terrence Crawford out and the only people who know you are in the UK. You can't call out an American, I don't want to say superstar, but at the very least American star in boxing and think that you're going to get that fight when the only people who know you is in the UK. You know what I'm saying? Allegedly. So Josh Taylor comes, he makes this move to go with Top Rank, and his first fight to defend his belts against a guy like Jack Catterall. Now, before this fight even happened, a lot of people weren't even sniffing or making any noise when it came to Jack Catterall. Actually, I remember watching a lot of the preview lead ups to the fights where, you know, obviously YouTubers, analysts were breaking down the fight. I also remember hopping into some of the streams since I wasn't streaming and I wasn't going live for the particular fight to see what some of these YouTubers were saying. Everyone's saying we expect Josh Taylor to win handily, etc., etc. The one thing I would have said differently is because I follow the guru, the god, Barry Robinson, and he put something out a while back where it said when this fight was first announced, and he said Jack Catterall did something very impressive in his last fight that may be a problem for Josh Taylor, and a lot of it has to do with that southpaw stance and being able to catch Taylor in certain positions where Taylor tends to, if he's not able to get into his rhythm, or when he begins to get into his rhythm, he tends to do certain type of movements that are predictable, at the very least can be favorable to a southpaw. Okay, so long story short, I saw this and I said, okay, this might be a harder fight for Josh Taylor, but at the same time, I still think Josh Taylor should win this fight. So with that being said, when I end up finding out that Josh Taylor won it, I said, okay, yeah, I expected that. But then now I hear the uproar that people saying that there's no way Josh Taylor should have won the fight, etc., etc. Now, with that being the case, I'm like, okay. Now I'm thinking about what Barry Robinson posted. Now I'm thinking about that. And I'm like, okay, I need to go watch this fight with my own eyes. I don't need to just, you know, listen to everybody. Let me go watch this with my own eyes. Okay. I go, obviously I still haven't seen the full fight in its entirety, but I saw, you know, multiple highlights. Once again, go ahead and check out that Fluence Lounge from yesterday. That's me in real time watching it. And from what I saw, it's definitely hard for me to believe that Josh Taylor won that fight. Not only going based off of the statistics, right? Obviously you can't. Boxing is one of the few sports where statistics in some senses don't matter. Combat sports in general, a lot of times it's a real-time thing. You got to actually watch the fight. And that's where you can kind of get more of an idea of what's going on, who's controlling the pace, who's actually dominating and controlling the exchanges, and et cetera, et cetera. But based off of just the statistics, Josh Taylor, there's no way he should have got a split decision win. There's no way he should have got a draw. He should have easily lost that. Now, if we're just going off the feel of the fight, watching the fight, from what I did see, watching two sets of highlights, if you don't believe me, once again, watch the Fluence Lounge. I had still Jack Catterall winning. It just seemed like in the beginning of the rounds, maybe 1 through 4, and maybe the 5th round, Josh Taylor was, it's not he was imposing his will. It's not like he was boxing beautifully. It's not like he was just absolutely putting Catterall in a position where Catterall had to figure out, okay, what am I going to do to be able to negate some of the greatness of Josh Taylor? It was actually more so Josh Taylor implementing his game plan, being able to utilize the fact that he was a bigger opponent than him, and he was pressing forward and pressing forward and pressing forward. But at the end of the day, nothing was landing clean from Josh Taylor for me to say, oh, he's just absolutely dominating Catterall in these first 1 through 5 fights. Or for Catterall, the shots that were landing clean, it's like, okay, if he can figure out how to make this be a little bit more consistent on these clean punches, it's going to be a problem for Taylor, because he was landing the more powerful shots 1 through 5, at least what it looked like in my perspective, compared to Josh Taylor, while Josh Taylor more so was the aggressor and was more so, he was kind of he had a little bit more of a higher pace than Catterall. That's what it seemed from those highlights. But obviously, once again, if I go off the statistics 1 through 5, it actually showed Catterall landing more and throwing more. So it's like there's a discrepancy between what I was watching and what actually was going on. So obviously, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt because I didn't watch the full fight in entirety. And that's something I'm 100% willing to say. Like, I'm such an analyst. I'm a guy when I watch these fights, I'm so unbiased in what I see. I'm not going to tell you something that's not factual in the sense of, okay, I saw it, I can break it down, this is how I feel. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm watching something and I haven't seen the entirety of it, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to take what I'm saying for granted. I'm telling you to take it for a grain of salt. But from what I was seeing, it did definitely look like Catterall should have got the win. So let me kind of bring this back into full circle. So what are the things that people are missing, in my opinion, or are not focused on when it comes to this? Obviously, there's always going to be robberies in boxing. That's something that's never going to change. There's going to be corruption in boxing, et cetera, et cetera. I even saw a comment earlier on the video, and it said MMA judging and boxing judging this year and a little bit of last year has been absolutely atrocious, right? When it comes to boxing, you guys have to remember the power doesn't necessarily come with the name, but it comes with the promotional company backing it. So in my opinion, I think if Josh Taylor wasn't with Top Rank, he wouldn't have gotten that call. He wouldn't have gotten that W. I think they would have been like, he loses, let's do a rematch for the undisputed titles. Catterall versus Taylor, But I think with Catterall being with such a big name entity in Top Rank, and with Bob Arum having so much plans for Josh Taylor, even if the Crawford fight's probably not going to happen, but so much other things that he has planned for Taylor, the last thing you want to see him do is lose to Catterall, because I bet money. I bet money that Bob Arum's plan for Taylor was all right. Because let me talk about this too. I was actually surprised to see Taylor versus Catterall at the time it was slated. Why was I surprised? Because Taylor's fan base, he has a Scottish background. He already is set overseas. Everyone already understands when it comes to overseas how big of a talent Josh Taylor is. It's the U.S. that needs to get an idea of how big of a talent Taylor is. So, what actually surprised me was the fact that with Taylor's first fight being with Top Rank, being against Catterall, that they decided to stick with the UK time. It doesn't surprise me they stayed overseas, right? That made sense. But to stick with the time, I would think they would have made it a little bit of a later time, at least a little bit later, to try and get some Americans interested. So, with that not being the case, that was very interesting to me, because I would think Top Rank's first priority would be, all right, let's get some US eyes on him right away. Let's make his first fight against a guy like Catterall in the US, which would actually, I know people would say, oh, there's no way it could favor Taylor more because that's not his home, that's not his stomping ground. But at the same time, it'll be uncomfortable for Catterall as well. But I think that goes into Bob Arum. I think what Bob Arum was looking at, he was like, okay, the first fight with Taylor, let's stay safe. Let's keep him over in the UK, fight a guy with like Catterall, right, who's solid. He gets that W, and then we'll start kind of looking and creeping toward him having more fights in the US, getting more US eyes. But after what's happened, I'd be interested to see how Bob Arum revises his whole strategy or his plans when it comes to Taylor, because that's not a good look. But at the same time, it's like short-term memory when it comes to boxing fans too. We'll be talking about this. We'll be in uproar. We're saying Catterall deserves it. But because Catterall isn't a big name, because a lot of people don't know who he is, and especially since a lot of his fan base is over in the UK, this is going to be pushed under the rug. Bob Arum's going to push this under the rug. Josh Taylor's going to keep chugging along. But this particular fight's going to be pushed under the rug. This is my opinion. But, as interesting as the outcomes that we've seen this past weekend when it comes to the Taylor fight, as interesting as the outcome we've seen when it comes to the Colbert fight, if there's anyone that's going to be benefiting the most from these interesting outcomes, it's going to be Josh Taylor, because at the end of the day, the judges scored it in his favor. So the only thing that's going to be able to detract Josh Taylor from his path right now is if Taylor himself acknowledges, yeah, I had a bad fight against Catterall. He probably does deserve the rematch, but I don't know if I'm going to give it to him. That's the only way this particular robbery or decision is going to follow him into the long term, if Taylor and his team himself acknowledges it. And this is us as boxing fans, but we don't want to understand. We don't understand that since we are such a what did you do for me lately type of community, we don't understand that actually hinders fighters like Catterall, who deserves a W, or a guy like Andrade, who deserves a big shot. They're not going to get it because promoters, they know when it comes to us as boxing fans, it's like, oh, they're going to be in an uproar for maybe like a couple days. But as soon as we announce their next big fight, that's all they're going to be talking about. We forget. We got short-term memory, goddammit. So y'all can say whatever y'all want when it comes to this particular fight, the biggest robbery, all this type of stuff. In 2 to 3 months, when Josh Taylor announces his next fight, that's all people are going to be talking about, especially if it's going to be against someone that's got a name, right? That's just the fact. And so at the end of the day, whether you feel like Josh Taylor didn't deserve this W or not, because the promoters know what type of power they have, and because they know a lot of the boxing fans are fickle and a lot of the boxing fans don't understand business, rather this being something that needs to be addressed, is going to be swept under the rug. Because at the end of the day, Josh Taylor did exactly what he was supposed to do. If you look at every post-fight interview, every post-fight conference, whatever you want to call it, that's been with Josh Taylor since this fight, and I'll be interested if he does any interviews next week. He stood on the grounds of, I deserve this win, right? He stood on the ground of the right man won, as did his team. Right? At no point is there anything where you can say, like, you may have heard his team say it was a tough fight, it was a tough decision, we didn't expect this from Catterall. Obviously, Catterall really showed himself, really proved who he was supposed to be. You know, obviously being respectful, not trying to downplay obviously what Catterall was able to do. But what you will see constantly from him and his team is the idea, or at least putting out there in the atmosphere, the factor of, hey, we did not lose that fight. Regardless of what you saw on that TV, if you were live in there, you would understand that Taylor won that fight. Also, another thing, please check out the Fluence Lounge for this. When I was watching the actual videos, I was talking to my guy, Lost One. Salute to the OG Lost One, OG of the channel. And I was saying, I was like, wow, if I was watching these highlights and I didn't watch the fight, which actually is absolutely true because that's what I was doing. But if I didn't have someone like Lost Ones in the chat, I was like, I would think that this was a lot closer fight. And actually, there shouldn't be much controversy when it comes to this fight. It seems like Josh Taylor possibly could have got the nod. Now, Lost One, someone who actually watched the fight. Salute to you again, Lost One. He corrected me. He said, hey, I actually watched the fight. And then from my perspective, Catterall won the fight. But what he did say was the uproar people are having where it's saying it's the worst robbery in the world and there's no way that Josh Taylor should win that fight, and I never seen a decision as bad. He said he didn't see that. He said well, what basically kind of to sum up what he said, I don't want to say anything wrong from what Lost One did say, but he said he had Catterall winning. He does think it was a robbery, but he doesn't think it's as big of a robbery as people were saying. So he's basically saying, even though they gave it to Taylor, he's not going to be up in arms over it because he said, hey, he was in Taylor's hometown. He was in his backyard. Sometimes, no, all the time. If you're a boxing head, you know, if you're going against a guy with what was the one main key that I pointed out that people are not talking about when it comes to this fight? He has the promotional company behind him. He has the biggest promotional company behind him in Top Rank. So you have to believe that and remember that. Okay. 2, they're fighting in Josh Taylor's backyard. Okay. 3, he's undisputed. So 4, what does that mean? He's going to have to give us a reason to say he deserves that fight. He deserves to win it. There's nothing that we can do to take away from the fact that he won that fight. And if you go off a lot of the comments and a lot of the uproar, it does seem that way, right? But talking to my guy Lost One, he said, look, as much as I think Jack Catterall won that fight, it's not to the extent of saying, hey, this is the biggest robbery in the world. Because if you take your emotions out of it and you put into the factor of he has the bigger promotional company in Top Rank, more money behind him. He's calling out Terrence Crawford of the world, all these super fights that they're expected with Josh Taylor, maybe even Teofimo Lopez versus Josh Taylor. Remember, that's another big reason why he went to Top Rank. Teofimo versus Josh Taylor, right? And now Josh Taylor versus Teofimo is looking even more enticing. You know, Teofimo's over there like, if Catterall did that to Josh Taylor, I know what the fuck I can do. Right? So you have all these things in these and as a factor, including he's undisputed, including he's fighting in his backyard. Catterall literally had to go in there and most likely almost finish Josh Taylor probably to get the W. And that's just boxing. And people don't want to acknowledge that. People don't want to be truthful about that. It's like it's like there's just like these two sides of us when it comes to boxing fans, and it makes it so fucking fickle. Where we're like, I love my guy, I love my boxing, like I'm such a big fan of this boxer. This is my guy, da 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 da. And when they're getting the W's, they're like they deserve the W's, da da da. But then when like an L comes or when something controversial happens, we're so like, I can't believe the judges went this way. When you ride for your favorite boxer as hard as the judges rise for a boxer that is expected to be a cash cow in the future. What do I mean? Darren, please don't speak too much in all these intricate details. Let's break it down so everybody understands exactly what I'm talking about and what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you boxing fans are quick to say once your favorite boxer takes an L, there's all these reasons why he shouldn't have took this L. Or when your favorite boxer gets a W and it's controversial, all these reasons why it's not controversial. But then when it comes to an unbiased fight, a fight where a lot of the boxing fans have no stake in either Taylor or Catterall or Andrade and Quigley, when there's no really stake because it's like, okay, I'm not a fan of either one of them. I'm just watching the fight. And then you guys see a supposed robbery. We're up in arms. Oh my God. There is no way that the judges scored it this way. Now all of a sudden, no, we're saints when it comes to how it's scored. And if this guy had more punches landed with a higher percentage, he should have won. We're fickle, guys. We're fickle as boxing fans. That's why Fluenceboxing is here. That's why Black Goose TV's boxing is here. I'm calling all y'all out for that fickleness. And I'm calling myself out for that fickleness too, because when I talk about these things, like if I come on this joint and Andrade loses, I'm not going to be out here saying all the reasons why Andrade should have won and da-da-da-da. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be 100 with you and like this is the case. But it's like we have to understand there's so much more that come into these judges' decisions than the fact of, okay, I'm watching this fight. I see this guy winning, so he should win the fight. When we're talking about big name guys with big promotional companies behind them, with money behind them, with expected super fights coming in the future, also being undisputed, having a belt behind them, all this type of shit, the challenger has to do more than just look like he won. He has to make it goddamn undeniably, I won this motherfucker. And that's what we don't want to talk about. It's so easy to be up in arms about a fight that we don't have any stake in. When it means, when I say by that is, that's not my favorite fighter. That's not my favorite fighter. I'm just watching from afar and I'm enjoying the art of boxing. And that's when a lot of times when boxing fans come in and be like, oh no, that's the wrong, it doesn't make any sense. But then when that same shit happens with your favorite boxer or your favorite, you know what I'm saying, your favorite fighter, you quick to be like, when someone says that's a robbery, be like, no, this is all, you know what I'm saying? So that's my only problem. I won't say it's a problem, but I'm just pointing it out. That's it. So ultimately, I'm gonna sum this up when it comes to Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall. From what I saw, from what was presented to me, from what I watched, you know what I'm saying, dissected, you know, was able to understand, I did think Jack Catterall won the fight. I think it was a robbery, okay? Was it the biggest robbery in the world? Was it something we should all be up in arms about? I don't agree with that. Because when you put into the factors of Josh Taylor signed with Top Rank, one of the biggest promotional companies, right? Bigger than the promotional company Catterall has. The fight happened in Taylor's backyard, right? Taylor was undisputed at 140. Taylor was talking about wanting to fight Terrence Crawford. He's talking about wanting to fight Teofimo Lopez. They're talking about possibly Jose Ramirez and all these different top-ranked guys that he's talking about fighting. When you put that into a factor, then guess what? Now I'm watching this fight with different type of eyes. I have a different type of set of glasses on. Before, I had to, let's have fun and watch these glasses. But when I know all that other shit, I take those glasses off and I put on, okay, here's a business glasses where I know all these type of things. And I know that Catterall has to come into this particular place. And if this motherfucker doesn't make it absolutely undeniably that he beat Taylor, there's no way he's going to have that. He's going to get his hand raised at the end. And that's boxing. That's just what it is. It ain't right. It ain't fair. It ain't what it's supposed to be, but it is boxing. And that's why sometimes I do get upset with you guys, with you boxing fans. Myself also. I get upset with some of the boxing YouTubers where it's like, okay, at one point we want to praise boxing for being boxing, but then when it doesn't actually, when it doesn't, you know, when it doesn't have that clean factor behind it, then we want to, you know, get on boxing for being boxing. Like boxing is what it is. And we know that. That's why we're fans. And if you've been a fan long enough, you know this is how it goes. So don't be up in arms. And that's why I salute Lost One for coming in here during Fluence Lounge and just being 100 with it and saying what it is, man. He was like, look, I was watching the fight unbiasedly. I got Catterall winning. I thought Catterall got the W, but the fact that everyone's up in arms and making it seem like it's one of the craziest robberies in the world, he said, look, if you put in the factors of it's in his hometown, he's with Top Rank, one of the biggest promotional companies. He has all these other fights that are lined up, or not even other fights, but a lot of hype behind the possibility of what can happen with Josh Taylor in the future. You have to understand that Catterall would have to be willing to go in there and make it known that he won that fight. And even though he won that fight, he just didn't do enough, probably in the eyes of the monies. The eyes of the monies. What I mean by that, in the eyes of the monies, the people with the big bucks, the people with the big checks, the people who's like, okay, go ahead, give him that W. We can make some more money off that. They just didn't see enough. So that's just what it is. People can be mad at it. People can be upset about it. But if you are, in my opinion, I'm like, you must be new to boxing, because I'm like, this is what boxing is. Now, if your idea or in your head, you're like, okay, I'm upset about it and I want to call it out because I want to change boxing, then there's nothing against you for that. I appreciate that and I respect it. Do what you have to do. But at the end of the day, let's not downplay, or let's not act like this ain't been going on in boxing forever, man. If you're going into a brother's hometown, he's 140, undisputed, all that good stuff. You got to beat the champion. You know what I'm saying? And from what I saw, he won, but he didn't do enough where, you know what I'm saying, the promotional company be like, oh, let me stir everything up. We got a Teofimo Lopez versus Josh Taylor fight planned in the future. Taylor versus Jose Ramirez, like all these different, no, let's not do that. So, all right, before I get up out of here, y'all, I do want to touch on the Chris Colbert Garcia fight. Chris Colbert is somebody, I just want to be 100% honest with you guys. I don't follow to a full T, but I followed him enough where, because if you guys kind of be hearing his name ringing around, Chris Colbert talks a lot of shit, and not even specifically toward his opponent, right? He'll touch on a lot of topics outside of boxing. So I came across Chris Colbert when it came to a particular fight that was being promoted. He was the main card, and in this particular fight, he had something to say about Deontay Wilder. When Deontay Wilder had, before the Tyson Fury third fight, he was saying, he had his feelings and his sentiments and different type of things, and it was very controversial. A lot of people, felt a certain way about the statements from Wilder, where someone was saying, he's having excuses, he's not, just accepting the fact he took an L, et cetera, et cetera. Chris Colbert was one of those guys who touched on it. Also, Chris Colbert touched on the Wilder situation beforehand, because I do remember Wilder and Colbert did not like each other. I remember Wilder saying something about Colbert, saying, I don't really, respect him. He always has something to say regardless. From there is when I kind of started paying attention to Colbert, started watching his fights and things like that. And I'm going to be 100 with you. I was never sold on Chris Colbert. When I watched his fights, he was flashy, he was athletic, but he didn't really have the boxing skill that I expected him to have, the way he talked. This is not being disrespectful. This is what I saw. But at the same time, I did see money in him. I did see a bright future in him, where he can make some noise at his, weight division, as long as his career is handled graciously. But a lot of people don't understand, especially when it comes to that side of the game. A little spill right there. But especially when it comes to that side of the game, if you have someone who believes in himself that much and talks that talk, sometimes you can fast forward and you can fight someone that you feel like you should beat the shit out of, but really stylistically and when it comes to the matchup, you shouldn't fight. That comes down to your camp. So I didn't watch the Chris Colbert Garcia fight. Maybe one of these days I'll do something similar to what I did with the Josh Taylor Catterall fight, and I can watch and I can see it once. But because I'm not that big of a fan of Catterall, I'm more invested in someone like Taylor. I'm more invested in someone like Catterall. I had no problem doing it because I had to make sure it was controversial. From what I'm hearing when it comes to the Colbert Garcia fight, it wasn't controversial. He got his ass whooped like he was 13 years old, and his daddy caught him doing some bullshit when he wasn't around. Like, with that being the case, I don't really have no interest in watching that joint back. But I do want to speak on a little bit in the sense of, it's very interesting to me because also I guess there's some videos out where, Shakur Stevenson said something about the loss. Earl Spence said something about it. Both of them were saying he don't got no dog in him, nothing like that. And you can't feel a type of way, because if there's anything that I known Chris Colbert off of following the sport, even though I didn't follow him aggressively, I knew about Chris Colbert, one, obviously because they were touting him as the next big thing in his division, but also because he would talk a lot of shit for people to try and confirm that. And I would just be like, why are you talking all this shit, brother? Like, you ain't even there yet. Even with this Garcia fight, he had a whole lot of things to say that I thought was mad disrespectful. And I can't remember the brother he fought. I watched him fight maybe about a year ago, something like that. My pops was still alive, so salute to that. But I remember I was watching. I was just like, and my brother was there too, and we was both watching him. He was like, we just not that impressed. The dude he was fighting, if he would have just gave a little bit more, he could have won him. He could have beat him. Excuse me. Like Colbert's very flashy, relies on it. Colbert reminds me of a smaller Eubank Jr., a much smaller Eubank Jr., obviously, like where everything is just relying on his athleticism. He knows he's faster. He knows his fast twitch muscles is on another level than his opponent. He knows he can put himself in dangerous positions and be able to get out of it without really being hurt. But if you fight someone who understands that athleticism means absolutely shit in boxing, i.e. Garcia, an Olympian, like if you fight any Olympian, bro, athleticism is not going to do it because they're fundamentally too sound. They understand that, hey, we can set certain traps, we can do certain things, we can plod, even though it doesn't look like the most beautiful thing in the world, but we understand if we stick behind certain things and certain fundamentals, it's going to negate all of your athleticism because boxing isn't an athletic sport per se. It's not like just because you're athletic, it doesn't translate to boxing. It's more so about fundamentals, repetition, and IQ, and being able to understand just being in the game to an extent and understanding certain positions that someone that, you know what I'm saying, they might be athletically gifted, but hopped in 10 years later, like 2 or 3 years later, they won't be able to capitalize because it's a chess match. A game like basketball or football, you can start later in your career, but if you just blessed, you can be a fucking monster. You can't do that in boxing. And I feel like there's, like, obviously with the new age coming and social media and everything being connected is one where, you know what I'm saying, just because I'm in a professional sport and I'm getting paid this certain amount, you know, I'm athletically that much more better than you. It's never going to change when it comes to boxing. If you understand the game, you can be an athletic freak, but at some point, if that's all you're relying on, you're going to run into the wrong motherfucker where they're going to say, get all that athletic shit off. This ain't about athleticism. This is about how hard the fuck you work, conditioning, the experience, and the fuck motherfucker in your corner who's making sure that you know the shit you're supposed to know. And that's just what I saw with the Chris Colbert loss. I'm like, okay, that's once again proven when it comes to boxing. You can have all the talent in the world. You can have all the athleticism in the world. You can have all the know-how in the world. But when you come across that dude who's been putting in that work in that goddamn gym and he's making sure he's drilling the right shit on a consistent basis, you're not going to win. Fights, you know what I'm saying? Boxing, it's all about matchups. It's all about matchups, and that's what it came down to when it comes to that Chris Colbert Garcia fight. Straight up and down. Simple as that. There ain't no sugarcoating. There ain't no one way around it. There ain't no two way around it. That's a fact. And that's why I love boxing, man. That's why I love boxing. And in this world, especially the world that we're living in, and that's what it's turning into. There's so many shortcuts in this world. There's so many ways that you can avoid hard work, consistency, and doing what you have to do and being a real motherfucker to make sure you get where you're supposed to be. But in boxing, you're going to be exposed at some point if you want some bullshit. If you're taking the shortcut route. Ain't nothing but hearts of lions, baby. Lions in the camp. Shout out to Anthony Yard, Tony Ajayi, you know what I'm saying? That's why I love this sport so goddamn much. That's why I love talking about it, man. It's just, you know what I'm saying? You'll get exposed, man. You'll get exposed. And no matter how much talk you talking, how much shit you putting out in the atmosphere, if you ain't really about it, you're going to get exposed. And that's why I love boxing. That's what we're doing. So, all right, I'm not going to keep y'all. Once again, like I said, when I started this thing off, it's a late night Fluenceboxing, but I did want to come in here and I did want to just go ahead and just recap the weekend because I feel like it was just so many controversial shit that happened. You know, whether we're talking about the Josh Taylor fight with Catterall, whether we're talking about Chris Colbert, being upset by Hector Garcia, man. Wow weekend in boxing, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I love boxing, and I hope that this year just continues to be that way. Not in the sense of, not in the sense of I want to see people lose that we didn't expect it, but more so it's just like just let this sport be as pure as possible. You feel me? And a lot of times people don't understand, especially there's a certain time when it came to boxing where it was almost like it was watching matchups and we knew who was going to win every fucking night. And I salute MMA also because of this, because y'all made boxing kind of get up off their ass and be like, okay, we got to put on some entertaining fights. But being able to see this shit is taking the illusion off of boxing, where it's like, okay, this motherfucker is really that good. It's like, no, anybody can be beaten any given night. It's just boxing has got so particular when it comes to who we gonna fight, who's gonna fight next, and we're so particular on, you know, the money, the promoter, all this type of shit. We get in this bag where we're like, oh, this fighter is unbeatable. And this also is why there's a problem when it comes to boxing, when it comes to like fanboys. It's like we're such a fan of one fighter because we've given this illusion that this fighter is really that good, rather than looking at it and saying, well, who has he fought? And not necessarily is who you think is good, but matchups. You can have someone that we don't know about, but if his matchup stylistically is bad to a fighter that we think is a beast, he can possibly beat that nigga. You know what I'm saying? But we don't look at things like that because we've been manipulated. We've been controlled when it comes to this shit to really believe that, okay, we look at this fighter, that's his record, so he's that good. But that's just not the case. If you're really a boxing head, right off the bat, you know a nigga's skill level when you're watching this shit. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times that has nothing to do with the record. You feel me? That just has to do with experience. So, you know, when it comes to Fluenceboxing, when it comes to Black Goose TV, that's what I'm trying to bring to this shit. Like, I'm trying to make this shit different. You know what I'm saying? I'm tired of seeing niggas like watching boxing and combat sports and like separating it from the basketballs and the baseballs and the footballs. Like, we need to look at this shit the same exact way. Like, just because a nigga got 2 losses on his record, it don't got nothing to do with his skill level. That don't mean he's not as good as the nigga with 0 losses on his record. You feel me? That's all I'm trying to get out there. That's all I'm trying to get put into the atmosphere. So I'm trying to get you on the same wavelength when it comes to your mindset and how y'all thinking, man. Let's look at this shit differently, man. That's going to be the year forward. But I'm going to get up out of here, man. You know what I'm saying? It's Sunday night. It's about to hit 11 o'clock where I'm at. I got work in the morning, but I enjoyed the fuck out of this, man. Expect so much more content from me this week. Please, y'all. If you guys are following the channel, man, go ahead and hop in that community tab board, man. I give you guys questions every day. I don't miss no day do I not give y'all something to talk about. So every day I'm posting questions in there because I want to see what you guys think about it, and I want to see how y'all will react to it, what's your opinion on it. So make sure y'all check the community board out and, you know, go ahead, drop your opinion on it. If you guys end up rewatching this joint and you get all the way into this 37 mark, 37-minute mark, I want to say salute to you because you're a real motherfucking OG and family of the channel. But go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not part of the family, hit the notification game so you know every time I'm dropping something. You know what I'm saying? Last but not least, comment on everything you saw, whatever you didn't see, whatever you did see, whatever you don't fuck with, whatever you fuck with, you know, or you just want to put a random thought on it. Go ahead and comment below. It helps the algorithm, the channel. We ain't nothing about growing this year, man. Black Goose TV finna be the biggest boxing channel of this motherfucking year, the biggest growth. You want to know why? Is because we talk that real shit. We ain't got no bias behind it. You know what I'm saying? I'm just bringing it straight to you on a whole nother level. You know what I'm saying? So much love to the people, much love to the family. I'm gonna get the fuck up out of here so I can go ahead. I got to finish doing a little bit cleaning in the crib, a little bit more laundry, and then I'm gonna go ahead, eat some food, relax, and get ready for the week. So blessings, positivity to everybody. Much love. I appreciate everyone rocking with me. I appreciate everybody helping grow in the channel. We're just gonna keep climbing up and up. There ain't gonna be no stop when it comes to this joint. Much love to the people, and make sure y'all look out for my shit tomorrow. We got some more content dropping tomorrow. We got Fluenceboxing tomorrow. I'm gonna get the fuck up out of here. Enjoy y'all.